Welcome into this episode of How to Ride a Roller Coaster. I'm David Ezell, and tonight I'm joined by Damon Burton. He's the founder of SEO National. He and his team work with companies of all sizes on leveraging the power of SEO so that you can outrank your competition. What's going on?
What's up, David? Hey, by the way, great podcast name. I love these names, these podcasts that are more chill. There's a million business podcasts, but when you get to the honest stuff, these are always the better conversations.
Man, and it's so funny. Whenever I was trying to come up with kind of the name for this, I didn't want it to be that. I didn't want it to be like business mastery or founder, nothing that was like that. Because again, that doesn't really kind of show it. But running your own business, I mean, it is a roller coaster. A roller coaster doesn't do anything flat.
Yeah.
I mean, you're either, hey, we closed some sales, or I don't know how I'm going to eat this week. There's not a whole lot in between. So it just, you kind of get those emotions of both. But no, I appreciate it, man. How's your week so far?
Good. So I'm the perpetual optimist. And so even when I have bad days, it's still great. But like we were talking before we hit record, you got kids and things come up like emergency room visits. So, no big
They
deal.
know you by name. Yeah. They're like, oh, here come those two again.
Yeah. But great. It's been a productive week, and we got a lot of big things going on with the team. So I'm excited for the upcoming months.
Fabulous. So before we kind of dive into some more of the tactical types of things when it comes to SEO, how people can leverage that and harness that, and just some of the questions that you might see, because SEO is such a big word and kind of a lot to kind of get your arms around. How did you get your start with SEO? How did that niche really kind of open up for you for SEO National?
Yeah, so I'll give you the short story because there's lots of other fun stories within that, and then we can go whichever path from there.
Nice. Okay.
So it started we can go way back, even when I was a kid. So when I was a kid, I grew up lower middle class, and it was I knew that disposable income wasn't part of the equation. And the reason why I mentioned that is because I knew we would never have a computer. And so when I would go to junior high and things as simple as typing class, I just jumped all over that because that was my opportunity to use a computer. So I was the kid that I was this interesting mix where I was long hair skater kid, but I got perfect grades, and I was typing 100-something words a minute going to typing competitions.
Wow.
And so I took that, and then it just snowballed. So typing class went into word processing classes. So, nowadays that's pretty standard, but back then it was kind of new, where you go in, you learn computers, and you learn Word and programs like that. And so because I learned that, then when I was a junior in high school, they rolled out a basic web design class. And so I was learning HTML by hand. And I'm so glad that I took that, because nowadays there's all these cool platforms, and there's Shopify and WordPress and ClickFunnels, but those things didn't exist back then. But even though they exist now, they don't know what looks good. And so it's knowing manual HTML, I still use daily, going in there and overriding things and correcting things.
Right.
And so then after that, my senior year in high school, they said, hey, let's, the people that took HTML last year, let's have them build the county's websites. And so we started building the websites when I was 16 years old. Now, after that, I went into college, and the professor, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I took a communications class. The communications class said part of the grade is going to be building a website, and you build it on the school servers. And I thought about how much time I was going to spend putting it on the school server, and it would just be deleted at the end of the semester.
Yeah.
So I asked him if I could build my own website, and I built, in my early 20s, I was big into cars, and so I started eliterides.com. I still own it. There's nothing there. I just archived everything. And that website turned into a big local community. I started having thousands of active members, and I would just feature cars and, the type of cars that were on Fast and Furious. And then coincidentally, Fast and Furious, nobody knew that existed. Yeah. And then it came out a year after I built my website. And so that helped propel the website even more. And so that's how I got into it. And then how it became a career was I did websites on the side for a while. And then I eventually took a job doing websites for a guy in a really specific niche. Ended up leaving that. There's lots of stories we could talk about employment, right? And so I left this environment because it was toxic. And when I left, I got headhunted by another guy because I worked in I developed a reputation for such specific types of designs in this niche. It was like weight loss and work from home, like affiliate types of deals. And this guy wanted me to move to Vegas, and I was newly married. I knew we'd have kids within the upcoming years, and I just didn't want to live in Vegas. And
Sure.
so he said, "Well, all right, we'll revisit in a year. How about you work at home?" So I got the opportunity to work at home back in 2005, 2006, and so I took that as the opportunity to start building on my own. And that's when I started doing web design. Now, the final piece of the puzzle was one of my side clients said, "What do you know about Google?" And I said, and this is a great story for newer entrepreneurs on how to position yourself for deals and start getting your first clients. So I said, "I know enough that I think I can help you, but I don't know enough that I feel comfortable charging you for it. But I also don't want to work for free. So how about we establish some mutually agreed goals? If we hit it, you owe me retroactively, and then we start a retainer." So they're in a no lose situation. They either pay nothing or they win. I'm incentivized to make it work. So my time's compensated if I deliver. So
That's great.
we ended up hitting those goals, started a retainer, and then I took it to a second client and I said, "Here's what we just did for these guys. Do you want to do the same thing?" They said yes. Similar results in a similar short time frame. And then I remember right then, I never wanted to be a business owner, or I wouldn't call myself an agency back then, but a solopreneur agency. I never wanted to do it all because I knew that would dilute the effectiveness of what was offered and the messaging and the branding. And so at that moment, I said, I think I'm going to try and see if SEO is my thing. 17 years later, a team of 60, ended up being something that I still enjoy this day, and it worked out well.
Man, and that's awesome. And I think you touched on it a few minutes ago when you were talking about just the basis that understanding and knowing HTML has kind of built, because nothing is going to be perfect. So even things like Photoshop, when I learned Photoshop back in the early 2000s, there are so many things that you can do with one click of a button that would take 45 minutes or an hour
Yeah.
of tedious design and editing. And now you can do the magic lasso tool and boom, it's done. Gets rid of the background with, really quickly. And same thing with like Chat GPT. It might give you a good foundation, but you have to really understand what the message is that you're trying to convey, who the audience is, and what you're trying to do. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it's just such a unique background of really delving in, having everything that you've built, but also being, kind of riding some of that momentum from the car website, that just kind of everything started to hit at the right time, that helped you understand this is really what I want to do and I can see a value. And I also love what you talked about with starting to kind of get your first clients, because I think a lot of people struggle with that. And if you can kind of go in where the customer that you're trying to work with has that no loss situation, it's like, look, either
Mm-hmm.
this works or I'm not going to pay you. And that also, like you said, you're not getting paid up front. So where you can just say, oh, well, I've already gotten paid. They're going to get B or C work from me going forward. I have to make sure that I can deliver and show them what I'm capable of before I'm going to get paid. I think that's a great little nugget of especially people that are just getting out, trying to find their first customers. That's a great way to start to get in the door.
Yeah, well, it not only does it incentivize you, and so if you deliver, you perform, but it establishes trust
Mm.
because you're willing to give first. And I built this agency into a multi-million dollar a year business, and I've never spent a dollar on ads.
Wow.
And I don't have any lead generation process. I don't have a sales team. I don't have an email list. And it's all because of establishing trust and expertise. And my wife's nephew, he graduated from high school 2, 3 years ago, and he hit me up and said, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know if I want to go to college. I don't know if I want to roll the dice and be an entrepreneur. And I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'll tell you the pros and cons of both, and you can decide. And he ended up deciding he wanted to pursue entrepreneurship and dabble in SEO. And the reason why I mentioned this is to your point, like understanding the basics, is I said, you can't do SEO until you know web design. And so I told him, we can tie this story with the giving first. And I said, why don't you, for the next 6 months, year, however long it takes, watch YouTube videos, learn WordPress, learn the basics. And so a year later, within that year, I said, just do websites for free. Message people on LinkedIn. I told them how to engage, gave them an idea for a prompt. And I said, message people and say, you're a new high school graduate. You want to pursue entrepreneurship. You don't know what you don't know. You understand the basics of web design, and you'll do a $500 website for free. Because what that does is it establishes the context of why you're doing it for free, so they know it's not a scam.
Yeah.
They're now willing to help you, because most people that are further along with you, if you come at them the right way, they want to help you. And so now he's establishing his expertise. He's building a network. So he did that. And then after a year, I said, great. Now say you're doing $1,500 websites for $500 and start monetizing this. Because when you start to exchange money, the conversation changes. And
Sure.
so before you start exchanging higher ticket, you need to understand the types of questions and expectations people have. So he did that. And then, so now we're like a year and a half, 2 years into this. And then I said, okay, now you can start doing SEO. Do this, do a similar thing where you offer it for free, but set the expectations on the value you're delivering. He did that. Well, now he's 3 years into it. He just quit his job and he made $10,000 in his first month.
Wow. Wow.
The kid's like
Yeah.
22.
Man, and yeah, and that's such the great way to scale it too. I feel like so many people, I mean, myself included, when I started, you come out and you see the competition. Like you'll take kind of a stock over the landscape and the city that you live in, maybe, and you say, okay, well, they're charging $2,500 for a custom WordPress site, or they're charging $10,000 for a custom WordPress site. Well, I need to be somewhere in that, and that's, like you said, there's no trust there yet. The skills may not be there yet. So starting in that capacity and working your way up until you understand the questions to ask, the nuances of the problems that the customers don't even know they have yet, but that you can start to address because the monetary piece isn't the main driver. You're focused on the education and the relationship building. Everything else just starts to work itself out. And then you get that confidence and those tools in your belt to be able to have higher ticket prices should you want to.
Yeah, I mean, he's charging $2,000 a month and up. That took me 10 years to get there, and he did it in like 2.5 years.
Wow. Wow. So let's talk about content for a second. I mean, it feels like, especially with social, you see people like Gary Vee and all of them. And I mean, I love following Gary Vee and all that kind of stuff. I think he has great ideas around just mindset and growth and content and everything else. But when it comes to content, from your perspective, how should that be done? I mean, Gary's like one of those 50 pieces a day types of people, and I see the relevance there, especially if it's in different pieces and you make it for the subject matter. But how would you approach that, especially if it's somebody that's, say, a 1 or 2 person outfit? So, I mean, they're wearing every hat that the business needs, so, but yeah, they want to grow. They want to be able to put some content out. They've got social media, but maybe they post on it sporadically. I mean, is it consistency? Is there like a foundation that you would kind of say, look, this is how we need to start, or think about content in general?
Yeah, well, I could split this answer into two. I'll give my answer with my experience on social media because I do really well on social media, but I don't offer it as a product. And then we can talk about how you approach content from an SEO side because they're significantly different.
Okay.
So like on social media, well, with both of them, I think we can agree that quality is better than quantity.
Sure.
Now, the first place you want to start is where's your audience? And so for me, my audience, I offer a B2B service. And so my audience is more so on LinkedIn. So you got to figure out where your audience is. Like I'll get more impressions on Instagram. I have got 0 leads in 3 years, maybe 1. And over on LinkedIn, I can get the same or less, and I'll get a lead a week. And so you got to go to where your audience is. And then you also have to understand the different types of content types that perform differently on those platforms. So for example, like LinkedIn years ago, video used to crush, and then now it sucks. And then text crushes, and now it's starting to kind of suck. So it's like these algorithms are always changing based on, how distracted we are as consumers and what types of content piece performs better. So there's some ebbs and flows to that. For me on social media, I wanted to figure out a way to do it predictably and scalably, but without losing my sanity. And so like the idea of having like a content calendar where it's like, at 9 a.m. and then 11:45 and then 2 p.m. we post an image and then a video and then a text and then a meme, like, that just stresses me out. And so what I do on social media is most of the stuff that I post is something that was more or less real time or on the top of my head within the half hour that I posted it. But in between all those things, what I do is I take screenshots of, like, with this whole concept of giving without expecting in return, because I still do that to this day, I get messages daily of thanks for, the SEO tip. And I'll talk about giving away your content for free. Thanks for giving away your SEO tip. Thanks for the business advice. Thanks for taking a Zoom call with me for 10 minutes, even though I didn't pay for anything. Thanks for how you lead by example of highlighting your wife and your kids. And so when people start to follow you for like people will follow you for your business advice, but where they convert is when they relate to you as a human. And so people will like when I post something that's business or SEO related, I'll give like a general example. On LinkedIn, I'll get an average of 1,000 to 5,000 views within 24 hours. If I post something that's about my wife or kids, I'll get 3,500 to 10,000 views. It's a significantly greater reach when people can, just like you and I had never talked before. And the first thing we talk, you're like, how's it going? I'm like, my kid was in the ER last night. And you're like, my kid did this thing too, right?
Yeah.
And so within 10 seconds, we're bonding as being fathers. And so when you share those, when you let people into your life, then, and you don't have to go into great detail every time, because what's going to happen is they're going to hear that. Like I talked to you about my kid in the ER and you translated that in your mind to a different story. And so when you share your stories online, people hear what you're saying, but they translate it to a moment in their life that means something to them. So the more that you can let people in, the more they're going to relate to you. And then that breaks down the sales walls. Like when I get on a call, I almost never, because I've already talked about SEO, I've already talked about how it works, I already talked about how long it takes, I already talked about prices. So by the time we get on a call, they just go, I subconsciously trust Damon, so where do I begin? So it makes everything so much easier. That's the social media side. The SEO side is largely different. It's way more about intent. Like there's these tools that you can go and you can say, what are people already asking search engines? So now you're not guessing. And so what you want to do is focus definitely on quality over quantity. And people usually ask, well, how much do I write on my website? How often do I blog? There's no such thing as too much good content. So as much as you can without losing quality or your sanity. If it's once a month, it's once a month. If it's once a week, it's once a week. If you want to find an ideal base minimum, probably 2 to 4 times a month.
Is consistency at all a factor there? Like where people get consistently used to you posting on Monday mornings? I mean, does that play any role, or is it, or does the quality trump the consistency just from that standpoint?
Both. I think if I had to pick one, quality would still trump it. But the reason why consistency matters, especially on social media, is because there's an algorithm to it. And so there's 2 components to why it matters. One is the algorithm. Like just like you releasing a podcast, your listeners eventually begin to have a habit of when you drop these episodes. Yeah. And so your loyal followers start to look for those release dates. And so it's the same on social media. Like if you're posting daily, then people are going to expect it daily. And if you start to taper that off, that's why you want to set the expectations within your own mindset of how frequently you can do it without losing your sanity. Because if you start to build an audience where they expect content daily, and then all of a sudden you cut back to weekly, then people are going to be like, what's up with David? Yeah. So, figure out where you're comfortable with. On search engines, there's a value to consistency too, but definitely more on quality there. I mean, my own personal blogging, I focus on quality. I don't even pay attention to quantity on my personal blogs. It's just like, does this message matter or not? Can it solve a problem or not? Can this help somebody or not? And if not, like, okay, I just don't have the mental bandwidth to make something up today.
Yeah. And it also feels like your own energy tank starts to run low. Like if you know that you're up against a timeline, if I have to get this out by 10 a.m. and it's 9:30 and your head's not really in it, you just may kind of push something, throw it over the fence. And like you said, now it's not quality anymore. It's just content for content's sake.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that. That reminded me of the other thing I was going to mention on social media when we're talking about, most things I post are within the last 30 minutes that it was on my head. But in between that, I take screenshots of those messages. And so I have a folder on my desktop that has, I think I'm up to like 600 screenshots. Wow. And so it's like private messages, it's text messages, it's a great example is like if you're on a podcast, take a screenshot while you're chatting and be like, I love David. I got to chat today. And here's the great conversation we had. And so I no longer have a content problem. I got more content. Like I could stop thinking of ideas and I could still post daily for 2 years.
Yeah. Wow.
Now when you have those days where you're just not in it and you're like, well, I'd like to post something, but I just don't want to totally make something up. Then you have just this huge bank of ideas. You can look, because it's a screenshot. So it's a time machine and you can look at it and you go, oh, I remember that. And what I'll actually do is I'll save the file name as the context. So it's like right, I'm looking at one on my desktop right now and we were talking about, I'm in a couple masterminds. And so I met up with Russell Brunson and the Inner Circle this week. And so the file name is Every Week I Get to Hang Out with a Bunch of Millionaires. And it's a screenshot of the
Nice.
group, right? And so now I remember the context of that image and I have something I can work with.
Nice. So switching a little bit to organic SEO, but also some paid media. I've always heard kind of the analogy of kind of like the faucet on and off. Like so SEO might be more of that slower trickle if you build it right, but it has that longer tail. Whereas paid media, if you're putting some money into Google to drive traffic to your landing page or wherever, it's almost like you turn that faucet on fast. But as soon as that money stops of what you're giving and what you're putting into that ad spend, it's like that faucet goes back off, or it goes back down to that trickle of what you've already built through organic means. Is that kind of how you envision it, or how can other people just kind of think about it when it comes to organic versus paid?
Yeah, it's a great topic because there's a lot of truth to the analogy you just gave. Now, I'm never one to throw rocks at other forms of marketing. Like if they work, they work. But that doesn't mean there aren't factual differences between them. So like with paid ads, you're right. I think the biggest. So yes, you can turn the faucet on way quicker, but I think the thing that people misunderstand, or it's because marketers are good at being marketers, is that like just because you turn it on doesn't mean it's profitable.
Right.
And so like the paid ads guys are often throwing rocks at the SEO side going, oh, it takes time, which it does. And I'll talk about in a minute. But what they don't communicate is, yeah, you can turn an ad on, but you're losing your ass off on money for a long time. Mm-hmm. So are we talking about how quickly the ad is on or how quickly is the ad profitable?
Yeah.
Because that's a big difference. And so you're probably burning money for at least 2 months, if not 3 or 4 months to finally dial it in and get it right. Well, within 3 or 4 months, I can start monetizing SEO too. Mm. And so there's a big difference in progress versus monetization. Now with SEO, the problem SEOs have on the other side is a lot of people say, well, SEO takes a year. And there's truth to that, but they fail to communicate why. And the why is when we launch an account, there's 2 things that start at the beginning. We got the research side of the team going, where's David's money? We got to go find the money for our client. And so it's looking at the tools that we briefly touched on where it's like, what are people already asking search engines? What are the buyer intent? Because when you talk about paid ads versus SEO, you're targeting different people. With paid ads, you're largely stereotyping and go, well, the audience is generally male or female. They're generally in this age group. They generally like these things, but you're not necessarily targeting the pain points. SEO is the opposite. It doesn't matter as much if it's male or female age group, this or that, but you look at the keywords, you look at the phrases where, like if somebody, let's say, like we have a client that works on depression therapy. And so they have this really specialized machine. And so we're not going to be targeting like men or women in this age group. Like who knows who has depression? So instead you target the pain points because people with depression are going to be searching things like, how long does depression last? So right there implies an intent-based lead because they're asking about a pain point with a time frame and with a commitment. And that doesn't, in that phrase, that doesn't communicate if it's a man or a woman. That doesn't communicate where they live. It doesn't communicate anything. It just is their pain point. And so now you connect to that pain point. And so it's different audiences. Back to SEO. So in the beginning, you're looking at the intent, you're finding the money, but then you're also doing technical updates. You're making the page load quicker, you're making it more mobile friendly. So you're 2 months into it just to know where the data is, just to fix the page speed, and just to lay the foundation. After that, it's just an accrual of credibility and content. And so it's this giant content machine. Now, the last thing I'll touch on is the exponential growth potential of SEO. With paid ads, the nice thing is also the disadvantage. The nice thing is that you can calculate $1 in equals $2 out. That's a disadvantage because eventually you cap out and it starts to dilute. It becomes $1 in, $1.10 out.
Yeah.
Now with SEO, it's going to be $1 in, nothing out. $1 in, $2 out. $1 in, $5,000 out. There's a really great study. If you go search Conductor web traffic. So Conductor's a company that did a study on web traffic. And what it calculated was it basically boiled down traffic from sources to website in 4 categories. It was organic social, paid social, organic search engines, paid search engines. And what was amazing was not that organic was the most traffic, but by the margin. It was 2% of all gross traffic comes from social media. 6% comes from paid ads, 64% comes from organic.
Wow. That's not even close. I mean, that's crazy.
So if you're doing social paid ads, keep doing it, but just look at how much money you're leaving on the table.
Yeah. Are there any things that that entrepreneurs just getting started, or people that, again, 1 to 2 person operations, that they can start to do foundationally, maybe just to before they would come to somebody like yourself and SEO National to really refine it, get all the processes in place? Is there any kind of foundational things that they could do right away just to say, oh, well, we can do this today. It'll take us 10 minutes, but at least it'll get us started on the right foot. So when Damon comes in, he's not starting at ground zero.
Yes and no. So there are things you can do on your own. Now, no matter how far ahead you've got on your own, we're still going to start from scratch to look for any gaps in between that we could identify. So we can't go, well, the client says this and then just assume it's true, because they don't know what they don't know. And so we're still going to audit everything and pretend like nothing's ever happened. But that doesn't mean there's lots of things that you can't do on your own to get a head start. There's 2 things that come to mind. One is, let's break down what goes into SEO. There's 3 categories. Now within that, there's lots of other things, but you can really simplify it to category number 1, which is how good or bad is your website built? And so is it load quickly? Is it mobile friendly? The second category is content. Do you clearly communicate your value propositions, why you're better than the competition? And then the third category is external credibility. So do other people talk about your brand? Do they link to your website? And so most of your visibility is going to come from the latter 2, the content and credibility, but that will only be effective if you have a solid foundation. So you've got to dial in the site structure first. So there's a great tool. I use it almost every day. It's free. It's GTmetrix, metrix.com.
Okay.
And what that'll do is it'll tell you not only how quickly or slowly your website loads, but why. You might need to understand a little bit of technical verbiage or forward it to somebody that can help you. But it'll tell you very specifically what is slowing down your website. On that page, it'll give you big, scary letter grades, A through F. You can kind of ignore those. Instead, what you want to do is scroll down to the bottom, and there's a variable that says fully loaded time. That's how long it takes your website to load top to bottom. You want that 3 seconds or less. If you can get that 3 seconds or less, you've already beat out the majority of your competition on page speed and user experience.
Wow.
Now, once that's done, what I would double down on is content, because you're either in business because you're the best at what you offer or you're the most passionate about what you offer. So one of those 2 should give you an angle that creates your unique value proposition where you can talk about these things and blog about these things, because you can only show up on Google for what Google can read. So you have to get this stuff into written word.
Interesting. Yeah, and I will make sure that that is linked at the bottom so that everybody can check that out as well. So talking about timing, like what does an average time frame? If somebody started with you guys now, and like you said, you would start at the beginning because you don't know where they may have some gaps along the way. What does that timeline look like for you guys to kind of get up and going, and you can sit down with the customer, understand what it is that their goals are so that you'll know when we get there? What does that kind of timeline look like in that runway?
Yeah. So week 1, onboarding. After that, we send all the recording to, we have a department that the only thing they do is research. They just look at data. And so their goal is to hand the copywriting team a blueprint. And so that way the copywriting team can excel at what they do best, which is writing words instead of researching data. And so after onboarding, then we got probably 2 weeks of digging into your competition, competitive analysis, keyword research, market research. And then we send that to the client and go, here's where all the money is. Do you agree? And then they go, yes. So we focus on doing the heavy lifting, but then give the client the right of approval on everything. Okay. Then after that, then it's like, okay, here's where the money is. Now, how do we align that with the products and services and buyer intent? So we map out a content calendar, which takes another 2 weeks. So you're 4 to 5 weeks in for us just to know the direction we're heading in. While that's going on, there's also the development side of the team that goes in and does that category number 1 stuff, the structure, page speed, mobile friendliness, fixes broken links, dead pages. You establish the credibility and trustworthiness of the website. Okay. So you're a month and a half, 2 months in to just solidify that foundation. And then after that, it's just this giant content machine of creating, publishing, and distributing content. Now, as far as how quickly a client gets returns, it's going to depend on how good or bad is the website to begin with. Did they have historical content? Like if we're starting at nothing, no content, minimal blogs, it's probably going to be a year before they start to break even. But after that, it's that hockey stick. Now, if they have historical content, then a lot of times, especially if it's like an established business, a couple years worth of blogs already, sometimes we can come in and just fix the structure, and it instantly amplifies everything that was already there that was historically being diluted. And so it's not the norm, but
Yeah.
we've had people monetize this within the first 2 or 3 months.
Wow. And that's great just to kind of have something to kind of wrap your mind around. Like, what does that look like just in terms of the time frame so that you can build everything else around it?
Yeah.
And Damon, I know you have a lot of resources on your SEO National website, ebook, all of that kind of stuff. So I wanted to, before we wrap up, I want to make sure that people know how to follow you, where to follow you, get in touch with you, but also anything like that that you may have that people can go and access so that they can start to wrap their minds around all the value that you guys add.
Yeah, you can simply go to damonburton.com, and on there, there's the free download to, I wrote a best-selling book called Outrank. It's on SEO, and it's an entire blueprint A to Z, whether, like I have two audiences. There's the people that understand SEO, and then there's the people that are novices. And so when I wrote the book, it was from a position of how do I serve both of those? And so it starts with entertaining stories about the car site and other sites
Mm-hmm.
that really illustrate the potential of SEO. And then it eases into the technical stuff. So if you have no experience or you're light years ahead of everybody else, you pick something up from the book. So damonburton.com has the book, has social media, has everything.
Okay. Well, Damon, this has been fantastic. I just want to thank you again for your time. Just a wealth of knowledge on SEO and all the practices that go into it. Like I said, your website, and I've perused everything on there. I mean, it's just chock full of such fabulous information. Definitely follow you on Instagram, follow you on all the other places, because again, you're just posting so much great content in these valuable chunks that people can really start to implement as they dig more and more into just all the value that SEO brings, and specifically what SEO National brings. But thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed the chat.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video and comment. I love to interact. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the channel.